Hello everyone, welcome back to the next edition of the ONLE Networking Show, news, education and member spotlights from ONLE Networking. I'm James West.
And I'm Kelly West, and we are the founders of ONLE Networking, the business network for people who like people.
Yes we are. Hello Kelly, you all right?
Yes, good, thank you.
Good. We've got lots coming up on the show. We're going to be talking about, is your networking activity causing you to fall behind? As we've just worked out, it's quite ambiguous. We're also going to be talking about the concept of your business team, even as a solo business owner. And we've also got an interview with the six-figure consultant. We're excited about this, Sam Sharma. So that's all coming up on the show. Just to start, we just want to thank our sponsors, the guys at Get Set Solent. So Get Set Solent provide fully funded business support services for businesses in the Solent region. They do some fantastic work. Check if you qualify for their support by looking at getsetforgrowth.com/Solent. So for the first part of the show, we're going to talk about this concept of, is your networking activity causing you to fall behind? What's this based on, Kelly? There's a huge movement in networking at the moment, isn't there? Particularly local to here, where a lot of the networking organisations are moving away from online networking. Well, we could feel smug, we could feel worried.
Yeah, we've had a lot of emotions over the last few months, haven't we? But I think you say local to here, depending on where you're listening from. We're based Hampshire's kind of Hampshire, Dorset area. But definitely, I think as we're speaking to more, particularly myself, speaking to more networking leaders, they're making a decision. They're doing one or the other. So it tends to be typically the networks that were predominantly in person pre-pandemic are returning to solely in person, which again, we never want to feel smug because we're all about collaboration and supporting each other, and there's more than enough people to go around for even more networking groups. But we're definitely seeing that switch of, we know this space really well, so we're going to continue in that area, whether it's online or in person.
Completely get the logic of it. I mean, Network My Club is the most prominent one, isn't it? They're fantastic. We're big fans of what they do, Bradley and his team. In-person networking, big stadiums, so sports stadiums. They love the buzz, the energy. They like the big room networking. They actually did a great job with online networking through the Remo platform. But similar to what we called earlier, it was the first year of the pandemic, wasn't it? That we realised, as much as people were saying we want the hybrid networking approach, you're always going to favour one over the other. Or at any one point, you're going to favour one over the other. And so in reality, if you run a hybrid network, you end up with two networks.
Yeah, well, you end up with people that like in person, and that's why they joined up in the first place. And then you're forcing them to do something that maybe they wouldn't have naturally gravitated towards and have done for a period of time, but then have thought, well, maybe I don't really want to do this. Equally, if you're an online network, because we tried this, we tried to introduce a few in-person events, but then because we're so big and we cover such a huge area in the UK and the US now, somebody was always left out, because it doesn't matter where you put your in-person meetup, there's a member somewhere that can't gain access to it, and then you're kind of excluding them from it. So for us, it was a really easy decision, wasn't it? And I mean, come on, let's face it, online networking is going nowhere. This is just the start of a new phase. It might take a few years for people to fully embrace it and see the potential. But I think, particularly for our members, we see exactly what it can bring you as a business owner.
Hence the question, is your networking activity causing you to fall behind? And again, I completely understand the logic. We came from an in-person networking. Let's just very quickly talk about the mechanics of networking, because I think to understand how online networking works, you have to understand how networking used to work. So BNI, were the pioneers of this form of networking, and effectively you end up with a good BNI group, which you did particularly effectively. You end up with 30 business owners all doing different things. So there's no, that you lock out your category, one web designer, one candlestick maker. Why did I think candlestick maker? I did.
Your age, yeah.
You get what I mean. And the idea is that group of 30, everyone's job as a networker is to sell the other one's products and services by referring them on or buying from them effectively. That's really powerful, because you've effectively got a sales force of 30 people that will go out and kind of work for you. But the price that you pay is that you then become an unofficial sales resource for the other 29 people in that group. But it works, doesn't it? And I think that part of the reason it works is that that notion is enforced. I mean, BNI kind of force that behaviour, but it works. But it's also, I think, because that was also built around a legacy of being in person, wasn't it? And I would never argue it is easier to build intimacy and gain familiarity when you are meeting people on a weekly basis in a live venue. That's why I think people have gone, oh, I'm going to go back to that, because they're struggling to recreate that online.
Possibly. I think for me, I'm the opposite now. I would struggle to do that in the room, but I think that's because of the volume of online work that I've done. So I understand that I'm probably, I buck the trend there. But you talking about that, the feel of BNI, you said 30 in a room, however many it is, 10, 50, whatever the number is, that worked when there wasn't such an abundance of small business owner. So if you were in Southampton, you didn't have 400 IFAs all vying for people's attention. So I think when there were less people in the category of industry that you represent, it absolutely worked. And what I think from my perspective now is by locking out that category, and you see lots of Southampton groups for BNI now, because you're trying to fit all of those people into a different space. And I just feel we're small fish in a big pond now. None of us are unique. I've picked on IFAs just off the top of my head, but you can get some of your best work from somebody else in your industry. If you are an IFA, you may only do pensions, you may do mortgages, you may do stock shares, you may specialise in one area or multiple, but surely it benefits you to have an armoury of people in your field around you that know, like, and trust you, BNI term, so that you can pass business on. So that's why we were open category, wasn't it? So I think times have changed, networking's changed. We say this all the time, and it has. But the online space isn't going anywhere. And I think as business owners, we need to embrace that, and we need to work out what we need to do as individuals in order to embrace that and make those relationships work for us, because we absolutely can build relationships online. I feel much more confident in the online space. I know lots of people that are in the same space as me. I'm in my environment, I feel comfortable, I'm talking to somebody, and I can have small talk on Zoom easily. In person, I struggle. I really do.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an element of people wanting to go back to the future, isn't it? I know what used to work, and it was an in-person network where I was the only web designer in town, that kind of idea. But like you've just mentioned, you can't avoid the fact that we live in a world where social media is a thing, and it's a huge thing, and it dominates, and the internet dominates what we do. So we can't, I'll go to an in-person event and pretend none of that stuff exists. The abundance of choice, and for me, the notion of lockout categories did end when the internet rose to prominence, because, when I needed a web designer pre-internet becoming what it is now, it would be just based on personal recommendations. And although that's still a big part of choosing a supplier, we can't avoid the things that we see every day. And that's why it's so hard to be unique. I think your uniqueness now comes down to more your personality, and particularly online, your activity. So let's just talk about, go on.
Well, I think if you're a good networker, I've certainly done this over the years, I do it all the time. I might not need the product or services of the person I'm talking to, but if I really like them, I'm going to work really hard to try and find an opportunity for them. Yeah. And I think that's something that we probably will discuss in the future. So I think, we are huge champions of the online world. Of course we are, only as a purely online network. But we do love the in-person world. I nearly said real world then and would have really annoyed you, because online is real as well. But I pick and choose who I then want to go and meet in person, because time is precious. So the online world gives me that volume. It gives me that extended network across the world, really. And then I can pick and choose as to who I want to go and meet in person, and whether I do that on an individual basis or I set up a meeting for lots of people to come along and have a chat.
We've got to work out why, though. Why do people find it easier to get it in the room of 30, or even in a room like Network My Club, maybe 100 people? Why do people find it easier to get a result from networking there compared to online?
I don't think they do. I'm going to be a bit controversial there, spanner in the works. I think it's just because the perception is I've gone somewhere, I'm in a nice venue, mediocre venue, wherever it is it might be, there's people in and out, there's a buzz, I might have had food or a drink and I've had value from that experience versus I'm sat in my office at home and I'm talking to people. If you had the same people in an online space as you did in an in-person space, you've got to work out how to create that buzz, okay? It is just talking about two people about things that are relevant to you. Okay, we'll put two scenarios. The same 30 people online, in person. You as an individual will speak to more people online in that space, in that amount of time than you will in person. But your perception will be you've met more because you're there, you're hearing people, you might say hello in and out, etc. But you will have more meaningful conversation in the online space, particularly with ONLE. There's other networks that do the same, but because you get to hear from everybody. You get to have breakout rooms, you get to have the immediate LinkedIn links from people in front of you, so you might open the tab and you'll connect with them afterwards. You don't do that in person, you don't. But I think it's just because we are so, we really want the sun's out. We want to get back in person, we want to go and we want to do all of these things, but we do have to be realistic about what it actually brings to us and our business. Because time is precious. If you go and you spend 30 or 40 pounds on an in-person event and only 5 people turn up, you really feel like you've wasted your money. If you spend 10, 20 pounds on an online event, you're probably still going to make some good connections with those few people that are there if it's a smaller attended meeting. So there's lots of pros and cons.
I just think it comes down to behaviour. I think it's actually that simple, that why it works in person for people is that they behave completely differently as they would on an online networking event. Online, well, in person, I guarantee the person that does well gets stuck in, they smile, they engage, they ask questions, and they do the follow-up activity. So they realise it's just an icebreaker. Like you say, volume of people that you speak to in person arguably is less than you get online. Because typically, in my experience, you might only have proper conversations with 4 or 5 people. Yep. But I bet you then really invest in that conversation because you're in their eye line, you are actually going to listen to them. And I bet afterwards you probably do some follow-up activity, certainly if you get a result. Online, I think too many people still think it's a case of turning up, putting a flag in and saying, that's what I sell, thanks, it's nice to be here. And not really paying any attention or getting that involved. It's a tick box exercise. And the people like Brian, who we've had on the show before and referenced before, the reason they are making money from online networking with people that they've never met is because they are behaving in a different way. So what is that behaviour? Well,
I think I could list 100 people probably, off the top of my head. Chris Mansfield I'm going to mention as a shout out. I mean, Chris is an avid networker, known across lots of counties. Avid online, does in person as well. But Chris is a giver. Chris listens to people. He takes the time to find out about them, work out what they want, how he can help them. He doesn't make a snap decision as, well, that person's not going to be any good for me, because anybody can be good for you. You've just got to have the right conversation. Brian says this as well, doesn't he? So I think we all know those people that make us feel special. Chris will have touched a lot of people in the networking world. He will have made a lot of people feel special because he gives them time and effort. In return, he's got an awful lot of people out there that want to connect him and give him something back, because if you give attention to people, they're going to want to give it back to you. So I think it's absolutely your attitude towards it, and also it's a long game, whichever way you go.
Yes.
It takes a long time. I think we're very impatient. Particularly lots of new start-up businesses think, well, I'm going to go to a networking meeting, wherever it may be, and I'm going to get business.
Yeah.
And then you don't instantly, and you think, well, that was a waste of time. And then you might circle back round to it later on. It probably will take you 6 months in any networking group to start to build relationships, conversations, friendships even. You might need to test your messaging. You might want to work out exactly what it is your network's looking for.
Yeah.
But then when you get into it and you do build those relationships and you have those constant conversations, because again, you can't have a one-to-one with somebody once and expect that to be a lifelong ambassador for you. You have to nurture those relationships. So, I think we understand there's a place for both, but I think we're really arrogant if we think online networking is just going to go away. It really isn't. It's only going to develop over the years, as will the software.
Well, I'll raise you on that, and I think this is my contention, and the point of bringing this issue to the show is that, is your activity, i.e. I'm just going to do on in-person networking now, is that limiting your networking potential? Because again, I'll go back to the BNI analogy, 30 people in a room, they know on average 240 people, Dunbar's number, that's a huge reach and sales force. But if you then extrapolate that online, and I know 200 to we got 340 in the network at the moment, so 340 people times 240, if I build relationships with those people, I have already created a network that the in-person can never reach in terms of volume, but also in terms of geographical reach. Because what if your best client is in a different county? We didn't used to meet them in-person networking. So the point is, Sean Payne's a great example of this, isn't it? Of doing the networking activity from Scotland. He sells income protection insurance.
All sorts of insurances, yeah.
But that's the one that springs to mind for me for Sean. That's not a sexy topic. There's going to be tons of people in my local area that offer that service. So why is Sean from Scotland being able to sell those services to people in Hampshire? Because he's done it right. He's turned up, but he's not just turned up, he's done the follow-ups, he's had the one-to-ones, he's tried to help people. So the point of this is, I think within our network, we've created a structure where the cream rises. So the people that get this, the Brians, the Seans, the Chris's, they are getting so much more from the network than we would have got in an in-person, guys. And it's just a case of, you may be more comfortable in person, but if you learn how to get this online bit right, sky's the limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, be realistic about what you want to achieve. If you are a local artist doing workshops, you're not going to want to sell to Scotland, because realistically people aren't going to come down to Scotland and do that for you. If you've got an online element, different story. Of course you can sell wherever you want to go. If you're an IFA, but you only really deal with people in your county, then absolutely you're not going to want to open your eyes to that potential. So I think about your business, think about the model of business that you run, think about the true potential of what you could achieve through networking, and think about it through stages. We need to be able to walk before we can run as well. So, when you're a new business owner, I would absolutely use networking for kind of fact-finding, relationship building, confidence boosting, because it's really lonely space being a business owner. So never be frightened to use networking for different reasons.
Yes. Networking overwhelm as well. I think this is another reason people maybe prefer in person, because the volume that they think they want quickly becomes overwhelming. Because if you meet, through our network, if you did 10 meetings in a month, technically you would have met 200 people. If you don't then connect with those people on LinkedIn and do some follow-ups, that's just, you cannot possibly process that many connections in a meaningful way. And this was your way of framing this idea of being left behind.
Yeah, I think there's I've been there before, I started networking 20 odd years ago, and back then it felt like a real pressure and a real weight that you had to perform and you had to get it right. I think networking, where it's evolved so much, you can kind of sit back and relax a little bit. But going back to that point, London had 36 people on it the other day. So there's 35 other people in the room that I can potentially have a conversation with. I can connect with all of those people if I'm a visitor and I don't know anybody, and I'm very quickly overwhelmed. I've very quickly got 35 potential conversations running at once. So I think, again, it's about being strategic and going, okay, well, listen, I'm not going to speak to 35 people, because if I start off 35 conversations, it's going to take me all week to finish those off. Pick 4 or 5, 2 or 3 even, if you're new to networking, and just nurture those relationships. Online networking will give you the volume, it will give you the reach, and it will give you the, wow, oh my goodness, all these wonderful people. But you have to take baby steps, and you have to do that strategically.
Narrowing it down.
You need to narrow it down, yeah. And also, it's not about what can I take from this, it's about a two-way, so what can I give as well. So listen to what people need and have a bit of a balance. Maybe speak to one person who is a potentially good customer for you, that can open doors for you, but then equally give your time to somebody that you can give back, because your background is going to enhance what they're looking for.
And also probably prioritise having a one-to-one or deepening the connection with someone that you think is not for you, that can't offer you anything, because then you'll quickly learn that sometimes the most unlikely people are your best connections. Because you don't know their full story, do you?
And that's, I think online networking is really good for that, because awful, and even in this day and age, we still do judge.
Yeah,
there's lots of people that will judge.
Yeah.
We'll prejudge people. So in a room, that's tough because you can actively avoid somebody. In the online space, you can't. So for me, it's been fantastic because it's meant that people have been able to get more involved where previously maybe they haven't been able to, and they've been given a chance to shine. I've got goosebumps because I think that's a lovely place. Particularly, if you're a quiet-natured person. And it's a bit daunting for you going in a room. Again, you can shine in the online space because you have a choice as to how much you can input. So, there's pros and cons for everything. But I think that overwhelm is, we have this we've talked about this before, and I think we'll talk about this in the next show, won't we? But very quickly, there's a tendency to go, I've said I'm going to do all of these things. I don't have time. I've got all these connections. I'm really busy with work. And then we ditch our networking activity. And that's such a mistake because you've put all that hard work and effort in and you've spent all that time and money getting to a certain stage. Nobody in your network is going to blame you for needing to take a breather. So just be honest. Just turn up to a meeting. Don't have a one-to-one with anyone. Just spend the time in the meeting showing your face and raising awareness of your business. But if you need time, you don't have to overpromise things because we've all been there. We've all had a list of to-do things that we've done from our networking kind of activity and then gone, I can't remember what that was. Oh, crikey, I'm going to forget that one, or, brush that under the carpet. So keep on top of it.
Yeah, love that. Well, I think that's probably the extent of that, isn't it? So the message there is, look, there isn't a right or wrong medium of networking, whether it's online, in person, and you can do both. Yep. But I would just urge you, if you've kind of gone, I'm going back to in person only, don't give up on online. I would suggest that the reason online's not worked for you is more to do with the way you've approached it rather than that it doesn't work, because we've got an abundance of evidence to show you that it does work if you approach it the right way.
Absolutely.
Kelly, did you know that Get Set Solent offer businesses in the Solent area fully funded access to a range of really important business services? So there's things like marketing and business workshops, there's one-to-one support, there's networking, and probably most importantly of all, there's access to grant funding.
Well, I didn't realise, but after looking into it, qualifying businesses who enrol in the programme will be matched with an expert advisor who will help them realise their business growth. And this might be through marketing, business strategy, or help to apply for one of the Get Set Solent grants.
Yeah, and because Get Set Solent is a fully funded business support service, amazingly, these services are available for free, as you say, for qualifying businesses. So check them out. Go and have a look at the website, getsetforgrowth.com/Solent, and see if you qualify for some of this support. So we're just going to go around the network, and we're going to start by thanking Rory Berry, the fantastic Rory Berry. His topic last month was about this idea that whether you employ people or not, as a small business owner, you do have a team, because we talked about the concept of the people that you rely on for support, emotional support, as well as business services. So you might outsource, you might employ. But we learned a lot, didn't we? And I think it was an eye-opener for members.
Yeah, it was. I was really surprised. I think a lot of people, we ask a question each month to everybody, don't we? And a lot of people talked about family, particularly partners, loved ones that are very close to them being their biggest kind of support network. But it also kind of made people realise, do I recognise that enough? Do I actually tell them thank you? Do I show them support? Because it's really hard if you're a self-employed business owner or you're representing another business and your partner, family are employed, because it's a very different space to be in. So the support that you get from those people, sometimes you don't just take for granted. So I think a lot of people were saying thank you last month. And one quote for me particularly was Spencer from Scotland talked about recognition. So he said, babies cry for it and soldiers die for it. And that really stood out for me because I think we don't often give enough recognition, which I'd just like to always tie back into the networking world. Do you give recognition to people that are doing good things for you?
Yeah.
We've talked today about how to build on your relationships and how to make networking work for you. But how often do you actually say thank you to somebody when they do something meaning for you, give you a piece of business, pass you an introduction? So
it's always quite disheartening, isn't it, when it either happens to you that you've gone out your way to help someone, and they don't publicly thank you for it, or we sometimes get our members saying, oh, I really helped that person, and they never really even thanked me for the referral for the time that I gave them. So you shouldn't you? And it's the same with loved ones in your family. If you rely on them, if you employed someone, I think you'd intuitively know that whether it be financial, a day off, a little gift, a bowling trip that you need to recognise, do we do that for the other people in our lives?
It's true, and I think it's a tough one. I'm going to touch back on that. You know, lots of people get annoyed or upset if they don't get that recognition. It is hard because sometimes, particularly in open category networking, if you've given business to that web designer over there and there's another web designer member sat in the opposite corner of the Zoom room, you're probably not going to want to mention it. So I do forgive it a lot, but you can do it behind the scenes.
You can.
You don't have to always do it publicly. So I think recognition, have a think this month about who's really important and, you know, tie that in and say thank you to them.
There was a really good quote from the network this month from Nikki Spicer from Vita Skin Spa. She talked about this notion that when she talks to people, so she listens to people do their intro and she writes her own version of their strapline or their intro, because she says it helps me remember who they are and kind of solidify that in my mind. Good practice. And then she'll have a conversation with them and she'll often offer them, if they are open to it, I'll read back your strapline as I interpret it. It's such a good exercise, isn't it? Because that's about how what you think you're imparting as an information and an introduction is often not what people hear.
I love that.
Communication comes down to how it's interpreted, not what you think you're saying. So that, and we've done this before at networking events, haven't we? Where you swap intro, so you do someone else's intro, and it's really eye-opening to find out, oh, is that what people think I do? I used to struggle with this all the time because I used to do social media marketing. People used to go, oh, he does something on Twitter. I literally did. Wasn't important.
Good exercise though. When you're networking, those closest to you, ask them to give you your strapline.
What do I do? Tell me what I do. That's the point about using networking to learn, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So good tip there, Nikki.
So for the final part of the show, I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Sam Sharma, the six-figure consultancy, and we're going to just get to find out a little bit more about him being a business owner. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this wonderful interview with the wonderful Sam Sharma, six-figure coach. Sam, I'm very much looking forward to talking to you today.
Great to be here, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. You're very welcome. Well, first of all, I'm just going to give viewers and listeners a little brief description of you. Please tell me if I'm wrong. James has written this description. So Sam runs the six-figure consultancy, which helps businesses achieve their growth plans without overwhelm. Sam's methodology is based on his own experiences building businesses and helping clients overcome universal and personal challenges.
Universal challenges, I'm not sure of. Yeah, but a lot of personal and business challenges, yes.
Yeah, you've got a lot of knowledge in there, Sam. So we'll go with it. We'll go with it.
Universal.
We'll go with it. Key for me there, which I really like, is through your own experiences. You've been there and you've done it.
Yeah, a lot of my insights are my own journey, and also the validation of the fact that if I can exist, so can be people like me out there. So I don't need to help everyone. I just need to help people like me out there. And that was really fundamental for me when I kicked the business journey off. It was about how many people like me struggle or suffer out there and didn't get the right help in the corporate life, then they burnt out.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you can be the change for others, then that's where you should start, really. And that's where all the motivation behind my work comes.
So was there a light bulb moment? Was there one particular thing that you can kind of relate back to where you think that's where this business came from? That was the catalyst.
Yeah, burnout, complete burnout, moving down to the seaside and sitting there and thinking, where did I go wrong? I've got all the qualifications, 2 masters, God knows how much industrial qualifications, but why did life looks like this? Clearly something's not right. And then I was in one of the talks and I heard that sometimes what we do and who we are is a mismatch.
Oh, interesting.
That's when it hit me. Well, actually, what I was doing in the banking world and who I naturally am were disconnected and pulling me apart from one another. It was in those light bulb moments when I started to remove a lot of the labels that we connect against the experiences, and we call them poor, bad, ugly, horrible, amazing, awesome. Remove all of them labels and just see what did I learn from each one of them.
Yeah.
When I compiled that lessons, I knew that I know already so many things about things. That how about if I was to commercialize these things and help others with it?
So this was as much a personal decision, maybe more so weighted in the personal element of your lifestyle, things not exactly how you wanted them to be, working incredibly hard, missing out on family, I guess.
God, yeah.
All
At the time
factors.
of my first child's birth, yeah, we were very like disconnected. I was working all the hours, even the weekends. I was a VP in investment bank, and it needed a lot out of me.
Yeah.
And the question I used to ask myself is that it? So irrespective of the number of hours I work, is that the only number I will ever get to hit in my income barrier? I just used to question this all the time in me. Is that it? Is that it? Okay, you can run for the promotion, you can run for the bonuses we were getting, but is that it? So for me, the burnout was like a line drawn in the sand saying that what can I do now if I was never to go back in that environment again? And the answer was my book. My book was like my first book when I wrote was it was called The Money Life Coach.
Okay.
It was my journey from a student life into becoming mortgage free by the time I was 30. So to me, that was the instructor I was talking to at the time. And he said to me, "You're not normal. These normal people don't do that.
Yeah.
So why don't you bring it all together in a book to help other people see this?" So that was the birth of the Money Life Coach.
Okay.
That was 11 years ago.
Okay.
And then I launched the Peak Performance because I realized money is an output of who you are. It's a blueprint that you're running with. You will, no matter where I will throw you, you will go up to your blueprint. You will always live up to your potential unless you learn to break that ceiling. So this is a journey of mindset, massively mindset.
So let's kind of roll that back. So that was 11 years ago. That was your journey. How long was your corporate career? How long were you in that space?
Long enough to have forgotten my identity. So after I left my uni, as you can talk about, let's say from 23 onwards.
Okay.
So from 23 onwards. Before that, even I was working in a telecoms company as a part-timer, but then the banking career really took off. And then for 13, 14 years, I was there trying to climb and slipping, and thinking, where is it all not working? Right? Yeah. Irrespective of the effort and the success you're having financially, but there's always a limit. There's always something there that blocks.
So talk to me about life and how different it is for you now. You know, one of my questions was how do you balance life? But I think of all the people I know, you are one of those people that just comes across so calm, so in touch with everything. You know where you're going, you know where you're at, you know what works for you, you know what doesn't. So family, business, it balances now for you, does it?
So it's a continuous, I won't say it's a fight, it's a continuous observation. You need to observe it and course correct yourself, catch yourself. A lot of that comes with self-awareness. Continuously, I check against the values. Is it in line with me? What emotion is it creating in me? Like yesterday, I let go of one of the older clients, you know, I was like, she's not right for me. Why am I holding on to this? I don't even need her. So letting go of these kind of wrong kind of people, because marketing is more about repelling than about attracting. You refine yourself, but that comes with confidence. That comes with time, passage of time. So now I make sure that I pass on a lot of my knowledge to my kids. Well, 2-year-old, he's pretty smart as it is, as you know. 13-year-old, she gets my attention because half an hour a day, I've got a system with her that she can win dad points. It's a loyalty points she can win. And she can exchange those points as long as she's learning new things from me. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, she will only ask, what did I learn? And if I plant the right seeds now, she's already got her brain. Like she's designing a clothing brand now. And I'm encouraging her. She's designed her logo. She's done all those things. So all I can do is feed that. Like, okay, I just need to nurture her so she can do something on her own eventually.
Yeah, I mean, listen, look who her dad is. She's going to be an entrepreneur, isn't she? She's going to definitely be in that space.
Well, we can remember the nature versus nurture. I can only support the nurturing part so she can find her own way. I can't force that because I followed the path that I was told, just be educated, get a job, and you're safe for life. Yes. Well, that wasn't for me because I was like that honey, like the bee that got trapped right in the middle of the honey and the wings got caught in the honey and I couldn't fly away. So I learned to sit right on the edge of the honey now, enjoy the honey and fly away when I want to. So for me, it became really important that one of the values is freedom. freedom to work from anywhere I want. I don't want to be trapped in it in a location. I don't want to be trapped down to the people. I want to have variety of projects to work on. So meeting different people is the key part of that.
Yeah.
I will always put people first, which means if they will struggle with something, I will have a connection or a resource to figure out how to help them. So what better place is that than networking, to be meeting people and enjoying that process, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'm going to skip to this question because it's fitting time to say it. How does networking fit into the six-figure consultancy? How does it work for you?
So networking is an essential strategy as part of my second pillar, which is the strategy pillar of client attraction.
Okay.
Now, that's the professional line. But the line underneath that is when you talk about your values, your motivations, who you are as a person, networking is a great place to meet like-minded people who match those value systems. Now, you may not meet anyone who's the perfect match, but you will meet people who are looking beyond the transactional relationship.
Yes.
It's those people where your values actually match with them.
Yeah.
Because they are not that kind of people. I still have great relationships with the people who were like me in terms of building relationship beyond the business. But not everyone is at that level. You see, it depends upon where they are in their business journey and what's the need that's driving their behavior. When you understand someone's needs, you will never judge their behavior. Never.
No.
So when we start to understand, well, actually, networking for me is to help these people to lift up and become a networker. Right? Help them become a better at networking. You don't need to sell to me or sell to anyone. Just hold a relationship for a duration of time and it converts to business because life happens.
It does. Yeah. And things get in the way and we never know what's happening with somebody. We should never judge.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to get that perfect timing for the connection, for everything to fall into place and for everything to be needed and aligned, it's impossible. So you're absolutely right. Networking has changed immeasurably. It will never be what it was before. You know, I've said this phrase how many times already today, but small fish in a big pond. We have to differentiate ourselves in terms of our character, our personality, who we are, how we treat people. People will judge us on how we make them feel. You know, I think there's so many factors within networking now, aren't there? I mean, you stand out head and shoulders as an incredibly good networker, a very well-respected person who follows through with what they're saying they're going to do and is always thinking about connecting the right people. So I think, you know, from my perspective and knowing what I know of you, you do that hugely well. Yeah.
Thank you. And I remember that goes back to my student days when I was in the boys' hostel growing up. And I was known as the PR guy for the lads because I knew all the shopkeepers who will let us borrow money or things from them in my relationships with these people. I just went there and I will chat with them and everyone knew me and they will go there and say, oh, I'm Sam's friend. So it's something in the blood. And I saw that because in my family growing up, everyone, Kelly, was self-employed.
Yeah, of
my
course.
dad's ad hoc professor. My mom had her own clinic as a doctor. Everyone in my family had a business of some sort. I didn't see that till my burnout. Well, actually,
wow.
I was the first or the second person who's going into the job world. My family doesn't come from a job world.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so you didn't naturally follow that path.
Because we were told, just get educated and you'll be fine. Yeah. Well, I did that. I wasn't fine because I paid the price mentally, emotionally.
So how were the family around that change of you moving from the corporate world? Were they really supportive? Were they there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I got the redundancy and I was out. I sat by the beach for 3 months, did absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And during that time, I got an old lady came to me and she goes to me, love, can you help me on her phone? And I thought, you know what? I can help old people with technology. That was my first idea. So I got myself cards printed and I gave these cards for the prints to come to my address. Yeah. And with the lady who brought the cards, she was really happy. Her name was Vicky. And I said, you look really happy delivering parcels. She goes, yeah, I love it. I was like, how do you get this job? She goes like, why? Do you want to be a delivery driver? So I don't care right now. I'm a nobody because the titles that I held were only inside that building. Yes. Outside the building, I'm just a normal person. And next day, I got a delivery driving job. Kelly, you won't believe it. I built my business on the back of doing deliveries from 9 to 12. For 9 months, I did that. Every single personal development book I was listening to, I worked on myself. In one of those deliveries, I met the president of BNI. And he goes to me, "You're not a delivery driver." I said, "No, I'm not." And then we got talking. He said, "Why don't you come to the meeting and tell us about your book?" That was the beginning.
Brilliant.
After that, the first client was a interior designer who said to me, "Can you help me with finances?" So I coached her on money, and she stood by me and she said, "This guy changed my life." And that was then. That's like all 11, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So you just don't know. And I loved when Steve Jobs said that you only connect the dots looking backward. Well, I lived that life to see that happening exactly.
Very much so. You're so open-minded, you don't judge people. You are one of the, I sound like I'm massively bigging you up here, blowing your trumpet, but credit where credit is due. You are so level and you do treat everybody equally. And I love that, because I do think we need more of that. We've talked about this, the online networking world has been a great leveler for people, because unfortunately, when you're in person, you can avoid people. You can choose not to go and talk to somebody, and that's wrong. Everybody has a story. Everybody has the potential to be a good connection for you. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to get on with everybody, and you don't need to, but you do need to give people the opportunity to be able to make form that bond and connection. So I didn't know that about the delivery driving. That is
I mean, and it not only healed me because it switched off my brain into all the pressure and stress of my previous life. It switched me off. And in the afternoons, I was doing meetings, coaching sessions. And when I hit my first 3K a month coaching, I quit the delivery job.
And that was your goal?
And that's from 3, it went to 6, to 7, to 8, to 10. Then when I crossed my first 20K a month, it was a shock to many when people were like, "That's not possible." Yes, it is. I'm telling you, it is possible. Build relationships, do networking strategically. Be clear on your goals. Your needs are driving your behaviors. If your needs is to make friends, you're not going to do real good in business, because your need is driving something emotionally there, which is unmet. So really know your game here. And it all starts from self-awareness. If you're secure, you can let go of the wrong people and bring the right people in. Like when I left the banking life, a lot of people in the bank are very connected with your positions. So if you're not in those titles, you are like, he's moved on, I've got more people to work with. That's corporate life for you. During that time, you actually start to understand, does your value come from in that building as a title, or is your confidence coming from your competence of who you are today? And I think that's where most people go wrong, because they don't realize they jump into falling into conversational funnels of places where they are not really good at. And they're trying to figure out that they need to fit in, get approval. If you just let go of that for a minute and just align who you are and where you are and what you want to do, you will attract people who are just like you.
In a more organic, authentic, long-standing way.
Exactly that. Genuine connections. Authenticity is fundamental rather than transactional networking tactics.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I love the fact with the delivery driving, I imagine you were proud of that. You embraced it. You didn't hide from it. It's what helped you get to where you are.
Cheers. It's just something I had to go through in that phase of my life to turn off the banker in me.
Yeah.
In that time, I was building something and outer manifestation of my world is exactly what I went through. So someone who judges people, you just don't know who's knocking on your door. You don't know these people, what journey they have been on, or what's inside of them that shapes them to be who they are today.
And the potential that they have. I love that, Sam. I'd highly recommend anyone to have a one-to-one with you. You are fascinating. Honestly, I could talk to you for hours. Just a couple of things before we wrap up the interview. But what's the one thing you wish you knew when you set up your business? That wonderful hindsight. Is there anything you can share with us?
Don't seek approval. Just be authentic, be yourself. Don't look to say things to please others. I mean, it doesn't mean you be rude. It doesn't mean that I always use the analogy of be the goalkeeper who wears different clothes, follow different rules, but is part of the same team.
That's great.
That's it. Be the goalkeeper. Know who you are. Don't lose yourself in the noise or the narratives.
Saves a lot of time, effort, and energy. It really does.
Absolutely.
Takes confidence, though, but very, very good point. And then just a little bit of a fun one. I probably know the answer to this, given that you've got a 2-year-old. But are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, I'm a forced early bird, but I rather not. You get the best sleep in the morning. Open the window, the fresh air. You just get the best sleep ever. My day tend to start around 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Don't start before that. It's just not for me. That's why sometimes only meetings at 8, I will probably skip that meeting.
Bit quiet. Yeah, yeah. Are you managing to train little one to kind of follow that pattern, or?
Yeah, so we tend to help him go to bed at 8 o'clock. So I get 8 to 10, I can go away in my office and I can just do what I need to do. So it's all about that managing like I've got rules, 3 meetings a day, no more than 3 meetings a day, because the fourth person will not get the best out of me. So why bother?
Okay.
In between that, look at the daily tasks, weekly tasks, monthly tasks in the business. Just be aligned with yourself, who you are, what you talk to the team, make sure they're doing what they need to do, deliver on the dates they need to deliver. So there's an element of system, processes, automate, delegate what you need to do, but the eye and the focus is on strategic direction. That's where you need to be kind of like, okay, I'm not buried. I'm looking up and say, where am I going further?
Yeah, absolutely. Because burnout can happen in your own business, not just in the corporate world. So really good advice.
Absolutely. And when passion, I mean, a lot of business owners are passionate, but when passion is not managed, you burn out. That's what people don't understand. It's the passion that's burning you out because you didn't manage it effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, thank you so much. It's always a delight and a pleasure to talk to you. I'd highly recommend people look you up. Sam Sharma, Six Figure Coach, the Six Figure Consultancy. You have a Facebook group as well, don't you, which is free to join?
Absolutely.
Yeah, highly recommend a one-to-one. If you're an only member, you'll find him on the directory. Definitely reach out if you've not had a chat with Sam and find out more about him, because you are indeed fascinating, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
So there we go. That's been another great episode of the ONLE Networking Show. Thanks for joining us. Please like, subscribe and share, and we'll see you again next month.